Through the mists comes forth RPGaDay! In the year 2021, RPGaDay comes back for its 8th year. A time in August when every day we tackle another question or topic by answering in a way that uplifts the gaming community and answers questions people might have about this crazy hobby of ours that serves to build the community and bring it up, that many of us make blogs about, video blogs, art, or great works. In celebration of the community of gamers, I welcome you to RPGaDay 2021. Hello friends and welcome! I am Rob, the Dungeon Tutor, also known as Omnisci, and today I'm here for RPGaDay 2021. Today is the 25th day, and the word is welcome. So, welcome! Yeah, that was easy. No. We could do a little bit better than that. So, for instance, I always think it's important to be welcoming in a community. And obviously the main goal that you're going to have for being welcoming is you want to treat people the way you'd like to be treated. And I think all of us remember what it's like trying to get into a group for the first time. It can be uncomfortable. It can be sometimes painful. If other people don't extend a hand to welcome you in, it can really feel awkward, uncomfortable, and generally unwelcoming. And I think everybody's probably experienced that at some point or another. That's why I think it really behooves all of us when we're talking for any community that we love and care about to try to be welcoming to other people who are curious. Whether it involves wearing a silly taco hat to, try to take some of the edge off of maybe talking about things that are personal or a little unusual. Trying to explain why it's a good thing not to be a jerk to other people is often kind of hard, because I assume that all of you are high quality personality people who don't have malicious thoughts for random strangers, who generally want to be good people. But that isn't always the case for everybody, and it's dangerous to assume that everybody will be. So for a couple of reasons, and almost all of them mean going past selfish reasons, having a good approach towards welcoming others is not only useful but necessary if you care about any sense of community that you would have in any group, like the role-playing community. And I have to admit, it's not and hasn't always been very welcoming. For one thing, in the earliest days, role-playing was seen as a fringe element. Role-playing games were seen as being the province of poorly socialized people who hid themselves away with their dice and their character sheets and their and the stereotypes were brutal on us. Sometimes true. Most stereotypes exist for a reason. There were a number of people who were socially awkward, who generally were intelligent enough to push back through some of the largely unwelcoming manuals and the like that weren't necessarily intuitive, that were written at a higher level, to be able to comprehend these games, to be able to run them, to be able to play them, and share them with other people. And the kind of people who might be interested in that was a fairly closed community. That's the roots of role-playing. Not very inclusive. Sure, you might invite people to come over and take a look at your game, and they might be really impressed with the miniatures, and they might be really, think that the ideas of being in an imaginary world and having a character and fighting monsters might be cool, but it wasn't always the most welcoming environment for such people. Now, role-playing games have made a deliberate effort to try to be more inclusive because they want money. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that. A game isn't successful if nobody buys it. If you have a pay-what-you-will approach to your games, and everybody buys in at a penny, and you sell 10,000, you did next to nothing. Even if 10,000 people have your game in their hands, you made $100, and for all of your work, presuming that it was good enough to inspire 10,000 people to get it, you've put your stuff out. Congratulations, you've succeeded. But in terms of a business approach, it's not sustainable. Most people would not spend the amount of time it'd take to get $100 off of people doing pay what you will. That's a weekend. That could be somebody's weekend that they spent. It's not the deliberate work of passion of thousands of hours potentially crafting a new role-playing game, or even the couple dozen hours that it might take to make a decent length campaign idea, develop that out into several adventures, or even I'd say probably about 15 hours that it takes to make a solid adventure. That's maybe, if you get $100 for your work for a single adventure, it's going to be hard to keep going to that well unless you're doing it out of pure passion. So, obviously the goal is to make something out of it and to be paid for doing so. You're providing a service, you're making something that is good, and if people are going to enjoy it, you deserve to profit from it. That makes sense. And with gaming, a lot of the time it has been upon the bottom line. But that means if you are into making role-playing games, you have to be welcoming. You have to have some thought as to how can we bring new people in. It's not just making things for the same old people who've been playing role-playing games. Those people get old and die. Those people can fixate on one thing and not be interested in a bunch of new stuff that you're creating. So you have to keep drawing people in to keep the community healthy, to keep things fresh. And I can't say that we've always been the most welcoming, especially certain subsets of the community. For instance, I've met a lot of really fun LARPers. Some people really love live-action roleplay and generally have a very open approach. They'll gladly talk about what it's like to actually feel like you're fighting for your life using these padded weapons where nobody really gets hurt. And it's as close as you can come to actual adventure, immersing yourself in the reality, thinking that each sword stroke has a meaning. If you can connect, it does damage, gets your foe that much closer to being defeated. Okay, that's really cool. I certainly love LARPing and everything. But if you go to a live-action roleplay and they put a sword in your hand and you're like, oh, cool. And I could be a warrior, I'm first level, yeah. And you come up across a guy who's studied, kenjutsu, kendo, Olympic fencing, and he just disembowels you, figuratively, and makes it feel like, what are you? Oh, I'm a goblin. And he just beats you down as a goblin. That can be kind of, not really welcoming. Number one, he's doing a poor job because he's not really portraying that character right. If it's just a mean goblin you're supposed to beat, and he's using all of his skills to whip anybody who comes through, that's not very welcoming. That can be a barrier to entry. You're like, I just got beat by a goblin. Oh, Ted? Yeah, that's this guy. Sure, that's a barrier to entry. If you're at a convention and you talk to certain people and you express that you're interested in their stuff and their stuff is really cool, but you just, have to monitor your finances, and as you're walking away, you hear them talk over your shoulder saying, that person wants everything, but they don't want to pay for it. That's a barrier to entry. That's creating an unwelcoming scenario, and that's unfortunately the experience a friend of mine had at a convention recently, and that person's not getting their business anymore, even though they strongly did consider it. So don't do that, people. Be more welcoming. Don't be so critical of other people, because they could be your repeat customers if you give them a good impression, even if they don't buy from you now. It's so frustrating to see that in especially a service industry of sales. But it does happen. People aren't perfect, and some salespeople are really not good at it. But if they're also game designers and they make the games first and then they sell them, that can really lead to problems. But understand that we who have something we're passionate about can sometimes be our own barriers to entry. For instance, take social media. I hate to, but let's do it. If you go to certain sites, certain groups, and somebody puts in, you see this all the time in certain groups, somebody puts in, "Hi, I'm new to the game," and they have a question. And you'll have a few well-meaning people who will put up a good, well-rationed, and thoughtful idea for the person. It may not be your idea, it may not be the thing that you think of, but it's what they thought of, and they're trying to be helpful. You will find people who will take a look at that suggestion and then just crap all over it. They will criticize the idea, they will throw up their own idea rather rudely in front of the idea that was proposed, and sometimes they won't even be that helpful. That is the opposite of being welcoming. And it's an action, honestly, that I abhor. I get very frustrated when I see a community that has people like that. They basically close the gates by making it seem like the community isn't welcoming. People don't want to force their way through rude people. They don't want to go someplace where they're going to encounter criticism, critique, and just meanness in some cases whenever they have an idea that's meant to be openly shared, or a question that's available for all to give their best answer to. And I see a lot of these groups that just wither under the face of such negativity. So, my thoughts for this, for welcome, is do it. Be welcoming. Be the thing that draws people in. Help where you can. If something is already overcrowded with advice, know when to back off and not bury a person. But if somebody has a better idea than you, maybe support that idea. Don't necessarily regurgitate it. Try to be as helpful as possible. Don't harsh other people's, what they like. Don't be hypercritical when somebody says, "I love this." Don't just jump in and go, "That's crap. I can't believe you like this." Try, if you have a disagreement with something, be metered and reasonable about how you express that criticism, rather than just dumping on something and saying, "Well, if you like it, it just shows that there's your family tree doesn't fork." It's suggesting that you're inbred and infantile or stupid. No, don't do that. I really don't feel like people who would watch my stuff would be the people who would do that, and I certainly hope that isn't the case. I hope that none of you are that kind of person, but you will see it, and sometimes it's appropriate to call those people out for just being jerks. Ultimately, I know it's kind of trite, but sometimes Wheaton's Law has to come in, where it's just don't be a jerk. It's not the exact quote, but it works for my channel. And try to think of ways of uplifting other people and being enticing, somebody that they want to return to and talk to and talk about, rather than that guy. Don't be that guy. So that's just my thoughts, and I think it's pretty good thoughts we should all keep in mind as we move forward. Thank you for joining me. I, of course, am Rob, the Dungeon Tutor. Be good to each other out there. Thanks for joining me. Thank you for being welcomed into my channel and my video. And if you felt welcomed and you felt like I appreciate your presence, which I certainly do, feel free also to like and subscribe if you haven't done that. But more than anything, if you want to leave a comment describing how something in particular stood out as being particularly welcoming, or a community that you know of that's particularly great, let me know. I'll tell you one right off the bat from me. I've found myself to feel very welcomed at the GUI Game Masters Den of Enlightenment on Facebook. It's the Facebook group for GUI Cube, and you guys know I'm biased for GUI Cube, and I admit it freely. But honestly, great group of people, and I've never heard something bad come out of them. I'm probably the worst person there, quite honestly. I've skirted lines occasionally, and I kind of regret that now, but sometimes trying to be funny can be dangerous. Comedy is dangerous in general. So I heartily recommend it to anybody who's interested in that group. But I want to thank you for being here. And stick with me. I've got a few more videos left to do for RPGaDay, and after that, wide open territory. But we're going to be, as soon as September rolls around and the family gets back to school and stuff, I'm going to be kicking off the Lair of Omnici reboot. Next season coming out. Should be very exciting. Dungeon Tutor is going to be exploding all over the place. It's going to be fun. I think we're going to have a good time. So thank you for joining me. Until next time, farewell.